These debates strike me as beside the point. The real dilemma is not between reform and welfare on the one hand and rights on the other. That's the typical binary. Rather, I think what you have is reform, rights, and welfare all in one nugget over here, which are basically reformist strategies within a tradition, and a complete conceptual and political revolution on the other. This does not mean, however, that one has to choose between these two traditions. In other words, you could be a reformist and a revolutionary at the same time. I think radical activists can consistently support, and without being relativistic in the slightest sense, both reform and revolt at the same time. And at present, I can see no other legitimate way forward in struggles for animal liberation. Okay, one last paragraph and I'm out. So, allow me to close by returning to the question of the relation between environmentalism and animal rights, and this expanded notion of ethics and subjectivity. Today, the most common means of conceiving the relation between animal liberation and environmentalism are hyper-reductionistic. In other words, here's the two tacks. If you're in the environmental camp, what do? You look at animal liberation, you say, these guys have it all wrong, they're focused on sentience or subjects or whatever it is. No, it's about ecosystems, to hell with that. Bring this struggle within and just basically abandon the central insights of animal liberation. Or, you take the opposite approach, you start in the animal liberation camp and you say these guys are fascists, they think holistically, they think in terms of systems. That's the typical binary that's set up by Calarco and Marty Keele has tried to undercut. Both of those approaches strike me as deeply problematic in as much as they miss the central thrust and ethical insight of both movements. I think there's things worth capturing in both traditions. Both animal liberation and environmentalism are seeking to develop an ethics of maximal respect, we might call it, and they do so in different ways that are appropriate to the objects of their concern. To conflate or reduce the differences here is to miss the unique ethical and political promise these movements have. Animal liberationists can overcome such reductionism by seeing their theories and practices as but a portion of a larger ethical and political project of enlarging and extending ethical respect. In other words, if they begin from the idea that what ethics is about is to be in response to another, a general other. It's not determined in advance. Animal liberation could see itself as one political and ethical gesture alongside several others. The goal would be to link these things coalitionally, not to decide which ones got it right, or to keep them separate. Indeed, if responsibility has its origins in the kinds of conditions outlined above, then all ethical and political theories and projects are in principle partial and incomplete, and thus subject to constant revision and rethinking. An ethics and politics that has its origins in such a notion of responsibility can avoid the pitfalls of reductionism, the kind that I've just outlined, and embrace a broader and more responsive pluralism. Such an approach is not at all relativist. It is indeed metaphysically or philosophically modest and deliberately open-ended. It is grounded, though, in these invariant values, in other words, values that don't budge. These non-relative values, invariant values, would be respect for the other and a responsibility without good conscience. Values that will radicalize existing forms of animal liberation and open this movement to other avenues and directions for change. Thanks. Okay.